welcome to ILTV Weekly. I'm Steve Leibowitz, and our panel today includes former Knesset member Dr. Einat Wilf and Professor Moshe Amirav from the Hebrew University. I was not here last week because cameraman Dennis Zinn and I were in London attending the Luxembourg Forum on Preventing Nuclear Catastrophe. We met many world-leading nuclear experts, and they were united in their opposition to the campaign pledge of President-elect Trump to tear up the Iran nuclear deal, and fearful that Trump's finger will be on the nuclear trigger. Let's give a listen.
The deal that was reached in Geneva and that was sanctioned and approved by the Security Council of the UN is an agreement and a settlement that the world has legitimized by the action of the Security Council. And that there are ways, if the US want to complain about something, there is a mechanism set up that could be treated certain things. So we have heard minor complaints about Iran not producing and keeping a little more of a heavy water than they should have had for a short while. I don't think it was a very significant thing, and I think they have corrected it since then. But I and this group here think that the agreement was a great achievement, and I also read that many of the Israeli security experts feel that it was rather good. And the opposition or skepticism come from political quarters in Israel and in the United States as well.
Also on the campaign trail, President Obama was talking about the danger of allowing Donald Trump to be the man with the nuclear codes. Are you similarly concerned?
Yeah, I mean, you look for qualities of character and judgment and balance in your political leadership, particularly if they're armed with nuclear codes and the nuclear button. It's a very, very dangerous world that we live in at the moment, and I think we all acknowledge that the biggest problem with nuclear weapons is not so much the likelihood of their deliberate use, but rather their use as a result of error or misjudgment or miscalculation. And it's exactly that possibility of misjudgment or miscalculation that I think we do have to be concerned about with Donald Trump's finger on the button.
I believe that if there is this action on the part of Trump in accordance with what the Congress has decided, there is likely to be a swing to the right. And that would be inimical to the interests of the entire global community and to Israel in particular. So I think we need to encourage the moderates in the Iranian political climate to hold to the agreements that they have, and if they don't, to suffer the consequences. But so far, I mean, whatever propaganda may say, I believe they have held to the way in which they were negotiated, the JCPOA. And coming from Pugwash, I know we were very supportive of it. I think we must be only too glad that from the time of Ahmadinejad, we've had a very dramatic transition. Here is a moderate administration in Iran. Give them a chance to fulfill the obligations that they have committed to.
Dr. Amirav, these nuclear experts are shaken and concerned about the Trump election in general and the prospect of a canceled Iranian nuclear deal in particular. Should Israel be, or can Israel be pushing Trump to honor his campaign promise of canceling the Iranian deal, or should we try to convince him not to?
I'm not sure that these fears have some basis. We have to see. I'm not so pessimistic as they are. And about Israel, I think Israel had nothing to do with it. I mean, they can, and that's what the Prime Minister is saying, that's a kind of a crusade he's taking on himself for many years to try.
Against the Iran nuclear deal. But Trump is against it.
Okay, so I doubt if something will happen in the next year that has to do with it. On the contrary, I think that some of the fears that everybody has about Trump will fade when he gets to office. It will be different from the time he was running to office.
Do you agree with that or not? Do you think that Trump will be a different man as President of the United States than he has been until now? And Or will he pursue this policy? I mean, on the campaign trail, he was very specific. This is the worst deal. The Iranian nuclear deal is the worst deal in the history of mankind, and it has to be scrapped. He's now going to honor the deal and go on?
With the entrance of the Trump administration, we're entering into uncharted territory. Even the assumption that always existed, that the presidency changes the man, that checks and balances of the American system will work to limit whatever harm any single president can do, I believe all of these things that were taken as given are now under a question mark at least. And this includes foreign policies. We're seeing already, even before entering office, a lot of orthodoxies in the foreign policies are being challenged, everything from Taiwan to the embassy in Jerusalem. But on this issue, we should at least consider it a possibility. I believe that generally it's not a bad idea to take people at their word and at least consider that if they say they're going to do something, at least consider that it might happen and don't discount that. The Israeli Prime Minister has already come out saying that he has 5 proposals that he will put forth to the Trump administration about how to do that. And of course, Trump claims to be a superb deal maker. If he believes he can get a better deal, please go ahead. The big question, of course, is can that be done? And most people are deeply skeptical about that.
Well, some might suggest that one of the things on Netanyahu's wish list could be, I'm going to convince Trump that it's a good time to have a military strike on the nuclear capabilities of Iran. You think that's a possibility?
No, I don't think it's a possibility. It's not a possibility from the American point of view. I mean, Israel would love to have it, but I don't think the Americans are going to do it in any case.
What do you think will be on his wish list? What is he going to ask Trump for? Take a guess. What do you think, if he's got 5 on his list, what are they going to be?
Well, I think first of all, the deal is multilateral, so it's very difficult for any one side to just say this is the end of it, the Iran deal. But I believe the Prime Minister will try to present options, everything from completely scrapping the deal and trying to renegotiate a new one, to, at the minimum, enforcing very severely the existing deal, not looking the other way when there seems to be kind of slippages in the deal, and he will probably try to offer all of those, thinking that even if he just gets better enforcement, he's already getting something much better than he had previously.
Moshe, do you think that Netanyahu will try to use his influence to moderate, maybe to talk some sense into Trump about international affairs? Will he listen to, will he have an open invitation to the White House to discuss foreign policy issues with Trump?
Yes, it looks like he will get this invitation. He will be one of the first leaders who will come and speak with Trump. I think they appreciate each other. And I think on many of the issues they will find common ground. But if you just mentioned Jerusalem, I mean, this is not such an easy thing and for the new president just to decide that the American embassy is moving from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It looks simple, but it's very complicated. It is first of all complicated for the United States. And,
in what sense? The diplomats around the world will be in danger, or why is it complicated for the U.S.?
I think it's a very far-fetched idea. I mean, many presidents spoke about it before. And you can ask, why is it that they never did it, actually? And the reason is very simple. It's not in the interest of the United States to put such a kind of a provocation to the Muslims all over the world. It's not just the Palestinians. People think that Jerusalem is a Palestinian issue. I always test it and I bring the evidence that it is actually, Jerusalem is an issue of the Arabic world and more than that, the Muslim world. So why have this kind of, I would say, provocation? I don't think he will do it.
All right, we got to move on. The new U.S. Secretary of State will apparently be Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson, not what any of us would have expected, who has a strong relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. While in London, I spoke to influential Russian journalist Sasha Bratersky. With Trump becoming president, Bratersky anticipates an improved relationship between Moscow and Washington, and in fact between Moscow and Jerusalem. He also explains the strong pro-Jewish sentiments of Putin, in his view, and the Russian president's desire for very, very good and strong relations with Israel. Do you anticipate continuing good or strong relations between Israel and Russia?
Yeah, it is very interesting that President Putin values Mr. Netanyahu a lot, because I think he sees him as a sort of strong leader who is actually doing a lot for his country. And even, many people who are not even Jewish actually say that Mr. Putin is, of course, very much. He is very fond of Jewish people. He likes, he likes Jewish people. He likes Israel, and he's not, of course, an anti-Semite. And he's very angry of this anti-Semitic comments or movements, right? So he's kind of repressing them.
He actually had some connections with some Jewish people that had a big influence on his life.
Yeah, that was a story which was repeated in some Russian press, that when Mr. Putin was a young man and he was a young boy, he lived in a communal apartment, which were, very common in Leningrad at that time. There was this very interesting and very kind Jewish family. I think 2 retirees who have gave him some books to read, very, very friendly with him when he was a young man. And because his parents were at work, so he had nothing to do, so they always hosted him in their apartment. So he's a trainer, his personal trainer, judo trainer, Mr. Rachlin, who has passed away several years ago, was also played a big influence on him. So I think that those, of course, personal parts, they also played a big role. However, of course, we have differences on the Middle East, and I think this should be worked out together, because it looks like, the differences are strong. However, I think both Israel and Russia want peace in the Middle East and wants peace in Syria. So, and I know there are talks and communications between senior officers.
Anat, it's clear that Trump wants to improve relations with Russia. That might be right on the top of his agenda. Putin apparently, according to what we heard, loves Israel and the Jews. Could it be that we're about to witness a new alliance of Putin, Trump, Netanyahu that will be dividing up the world?
Well, I don't know about dividing up the world, but certainly we could be looking at a certain affinity and mutual appreciation between those leaders. President-elect Trump certainly made no secret of his appreciation for Putin, and that favor was returned in kind throughout the campaign. So there's no doubt that this time you will not need a kind of Obama declaration of a reset, because it will be a very natural process of warming relations and better relations between the two countries, and that in itself is probably a good thing. Israel has already started quite a few years ago the process of warming relations with Russia and with Putin. This is as part of a general foreign policy effort on behalf of Israel to diversify its relations, to create a stronger network of relations with more country. There's no doubt with Russia becoming a critical player in the Middle East, this is critical for Israel's immediate interests. So I think we're going to see closer cooperation all around between those 3 leaders. But we need to remember, for each one of them, it's going to be about specific definition of their interests and working together to serve wherever those interests meet.
Well, Moshe, the main foreign policy person that Trump is going to be relying on is apparently going to be the CEO of Exxon, Rex Tillerson. I had to look at my paper because that's not exactly a name that is a household word, not here and not in the United States. Will he be able to function as the Secretary of State of the United States in an effective way?
I think it has nothing to do with being involved in politics. To try and be a good Secretary of State. You can be a businessman and a very good Secretary of State. It has to do with his personality. I know nothing about him. Nobody knows a lot about how he dealt international affairs, and he will have to prove it. So I can't say anything about him, but definitely he's coming with a kind of empty idea He doesn't have anything about on the table. He even doesn't know what Trump thinks about international affairs. So we will have to wait and see. I'm not optimistic about it. I'm not pessimistic about it. We just have to see.
All right, we're going to have more time, I'm sure, in future weeks to talk about Trump. For time concerns, we have to move on to the next section. Turning now to the settlement arrangements bill that has some Israeli friends concerned that the legislation will effectively kill the two-state solution. A leading Israeli advocate named John Linden, who heads the One Voice organization in Europe. And this Irish-born activist is afraid that the Middle East is heading toward a dangerous one-state reality.
Well, first off, it's important to note that this hasn't fully passed through the Knesset, so we'll see what sort of form it takes and whether the Supreme Court ultimately strikes it down. But it's part of a larger dynamic that we do find really troubling, which is this gradual movement towards a one-state reality, which we think is incredibly dangerous for Israelis and for Palestinians. And in that sense, it needs to be resisted. One maybe note of optimism around it is that it does wake many moderate centrist Israelis up to that direction of travel. I think people have been complacent about a two-state solution for a long time, sort of assuming it will somehow arrive at some stage. In that time, people on the radical right have been very busy establishing facts that work against a two-state solution, and the vast majority of Israelis still want separation. They want a Jewish and democratic state. So perhaps this can be something that helps to awaken them to the need to move meaningfully towards that, and that means actions, not just words.
Some Israelis were actually gleeful, including the leader of the Jewish Home Party, Naftali Bennett, a key cabinet minister, a member of the coalition, after the Trump election. He was saying the idea of a two-state solution is dead. We have to move towards a different solution of one state where basically all of Judea and Samaria becomes part of Israel. Is that a scary thought to you?
It is, and it's important that it's a scary thought to most Israelis too. Jewish Home don't have support for this agenda, and I think the more they try and articulate it, potentially the more that, as I said, ordinary Israelis will wake up to it. If we move towards this kind of one-state reality, this gradual annexation of Judea and Samaria, what you lose is Jewish democracy. You lose something that Israelis and Jews have been fighting for a very long time, and that generations have worked hard and made lots of sacrifices for in order to attain. And then on the other side of the equation, you also are depriving Palestinians for their right to self-determination, which is no less just than Jews' right for self-determination. Now, the goal of a two-state solution, whilst it's still viable, allows us to partition the land for both societies, which are really nationalistic, to have their own countries that they feel represent who they are as people, religiously, ethnically, culturally. If we lose that chance, and we force populations that don't want to live with each other to share a country that has a roughly 50% sort of balance between Jews and Arabs, I'm afraid that we could see terrible, terrible consequences that would make the conflict up until now look like just a prelude to the real Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So while there's a chance to avoid that, I think it's really, really important for Israelis and Palestinians to work toward it.
Do you share his fears about that we could be heading towards the end of the two-state solution idea?
The problem I have with the notion that settlements and settlement building is what's preventing the emerging of a two-state solution is that it conveniently neglects to notice that the reason we don't have a two-state solution is because the Arab and the Arab Palestinians have always rejected any solution that would mean partition of the land, establishment of a Jewish state and an Arab state as the United Nations envisioned. They have never said yes to any offer that would grant them their own state if it meant that the Jewish people would have their own as well. The settlements are certainly not helping us get there, but they are not the reason we are not there. And if outside observers, if European or Western powers truly want to help the sides to achieve a two-state solution, they need to equally send the same message to both sides. To both of them, they need to say, neither one of you can have it all. Neither one of you has the superior or exclusive right to the land. On the Israeli side, it means stopping settlement building, putting a limit and a border on where Israel is. But on the Arab and Palestinian side, it means finally end this whole issue of right of return, your claim to all of Palestine from the river to the sea, take an agreement that gives you a state in the West Bank and Gaza, and that's it. The rest of it will be the state of Israel.
Well, Moshe, do you think that there's a possibility of doing what some Europeans are now suggesting, and that is take it step by step rather than to try to find a final agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, to sort of find ways that they do agree upon, that we can sort of move things in a step-by-step fashion?
Yeah, but first relating to what was said here by my colleague, and also the notion in the world is that we have to choose between a one-state solution or a two-state solution. As far as I understand Israeli politics today, the majority of the Israelis, including the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, we, the majority, we are in favor of a two-state solution. I know a little bit about the Palestinians. I'm dealing with them many years. I think that the central body of the Palestinians today, they're in favor of a two-state solution, not for a one-state solution.
Anat doesn't agree with you. She's shaking her head.
Of course, she's not the only one who doesn't agree with me, but I'm telling you that the way I see it, you're asking me, I think that the majority of the Palestinians and the leadership are in favor of a two-state solution. Actually, when we are speaking about, we were mentioning before Camp David, which was the last encounter, the last meeting we had.
Well, let me ask you this, because
yeah.
we can't go back into the history now, but do you both think that with Trump now as the president and with Rex Tillerson as the possible Secretary of State, it's going to be difficult moving forward with any kind of a peace process?
Again, it's uncharted territory with the Trump administration,
Okay.
but ultimately the only thing that will get us to peace is the Arab side understanding that the Jewish people have a right to be here, an equal right. They are here as a people who are home, and that they should forgo any notion and any hope that one day we can be made to go away.
Final word, Moshe?
Yeah, of course, I don't agree with her. I see the situation differently. I think there is a chance that Trump might try and do what many presidents tried and failed. I think this is a kind of dream he has, that he can do it. And I say, let's see.
You're not
let's
so
see.
pessimistic
I'm
yet.
not so pessimistic.
All right, I'm sorry to say that that's all the time we have for this edition of Israel Weekly. Thanks again to our panelists, Professor Moshe Amirav and Dr. Einat Wilf. I'm Steve Leibowitz. Until next week, wishing you all shalom from Israel.